Fantastic. Well, thank you all for joining us on this roundtable about design. And hello, design and I'm loud anyway, so it's fine. Design and TV, IPTV platforms, etc. So we'll do some intros in terms of who's on the panel first, and then we'll kind of dive into it. We have some multimedia because we felt it was a little bit weird to do a presentation or a roundtable about design with no images, but at the same time, we it's going to be a freewheeling conversation, I hope. So we're just going to jump back and forth, and we'll reference slides when appropriate. So I'll start. I'm Jason Meal. I'm the moderator. At Tracy's request, I will be the John McLaughlin today. So I'm going to say wrong and things like this. And I'm a recovering television executive. I spent time in my past life at places like DreamWorks, Viacom, National Geographic, and Current TV. Now I'm the managing director at Method, which is a design and innovation shop that has offices here in San Francisco as well as in New York and London. We happen to do a lot of work in the TV and IPTV space. We've worked with people like Google, Intel, Time Warner, Comcast, BBC, Sky, Turner, and we've done a lot of work with startups as well, like Vigil, if you're familiar with that from FunctionX. So we may reference a few of those today. So that's me, and why don't we just go around and make introductions.
I'm Dale Herrickstad. Sounds like it's not on. Dale Herrickstad. My company used to be called Schematic. It's now called Possible Worldwide, and I represent. I'm the Chief Interaction Officer, title which slid from being Chief Creative Officer to an Interaction Officer because of digital and what I'm involved with. So that's me. And I've been in television for quite a few years.
I'm Dewey Reed, and I spent about 25 years in film and television, Lucasfilm and Colossal Pictures, before I got into the interactive business. Was at Microsoft in the early 90s through 2000 doing interactive television and also MSN. Ended up at Red Sky as Chief Creative Officer there. Then I went out on my own and for about 10 years, and I have a company called Eat TV, Entertainment Advertising Technology Television. And we've developed a lot of iPad apps and electronic magazines and different things like that. But we have a bunch with Fox right now. And just last year, I just took the position of VP of Design on Global Media at Yahoo, and we're redesigning the entire network on 4 screens.
Hello, I'm Olivier Lacour, VP Design of NDS. Just as you, I've got a background in broadcast design. And since actually more than 10 years, we are focusing very hard on making the user interface for TV better. I'm heading the Snowflake R&D program since 7 years. And this year, we are releasing 3 new versions for SFR, the first IPTV platform worldwide, Zone, bundled with fiber, and a big release for Liberty Global all across Europe.
And I think Tracy's a big believer in having a wild card on the panel, and I think I'm it, because I have 0 background in television other than having grown up watching it. My name is Chris Nossel. I'm Nathan Shedroff's co-author for the book Make It So, and I don't recall if he gave us a formal plug, so that book is due out in late August through Rosenfeld Media. And I'm here partially in regard to that. I can talk, he's sort of spent his energy on that presentation, so I'm here to bring that sort of anthropomorphic viewpoint to this conversation. I'm also managing director for a local design firm here in San Francisco called Cooper, so I'm here also in that regard. Although I think when Jason was originally talking to me about this panel, I also realized I'm an oddball in another way, but I don't think I mentioned it, and that I don't have a television. I only have like a projector and get all my media through like my PS3 or my Xbox. Mm-hmm. So oddball in a number of ways. So you'll be able to shout wrong at me a lot.
That's what I like to hear. So we're going to start off, we'll just talk about some broad-based issues and see where the conversation goes. So first, we'll just talk about generally about TV interface, because I know all of you have the experience that people come up and say, You know, I really love my TV UI. It's really what I can't tell you how perfect it is. I think there's, there's a lot of limiting factors in, in design for television, in design for cross-platforms, we'll talk about more specifically. But I mean, where do you guys see, I guess, the, TV interfaces going? What does TV interface mean? What are the limiting factors? Is TV, as a 10-foot experience, going to have its iPhone moment or not, and either literally or figuratively, I guess? Let's just start there and talk kind of at a large scale about what's happening within the world of interface. What are best-in-class examples of what's happening in TV right now and where things going? I don't know who wants to start. Say something.
Okay. Well, actually, I think I see them becoming. I've worked on TV interfaces for a long time, and I see them attempting to become simpler. And in one regard, I mean, there's an interesting area of common interfaces that try to find, you're trying to find a movie. So you go through these layers of clicking and clicking through this list and layers of genres, attempting to kind of simplify that and and usually that's through a smarter system. I mean, the goal has always been that the system is smart enough to be able to find things similar, or maybe it's kicking things up so it is, you wouldn't have to work at it. So simplicity is one. I just spoke about the fact that I really like the interfaces to be richer. So one of my favorite things to complain about is the lack of richness in the capabilities of a lot of set-top boxes out there today. So it has been a struggle to try to get a rich experience, and I believe that the audience today, because of iOS and because in the hands of customer are these rich, wonderful 30 frames a second motion, all this wonderful layered stuff, that's what they expect. So when they don't get that on your television, it's a really bad experience.
So is hardware a major limiting factor that you've
Yes.
seen in terms of
Yes.
chipset, in terms of remote? Like, what are the things that are holding you back from doing what you want to do in terms of being able to deliver that experience?
Well, it is the technology, and certain things that it seems like there's common things that are in a lot of set-top boxes. There's something about a lot of the set-top boxes that are out there today, at least in the U.S. market. They have common things like the video has to be at the top layer. It's not. I mean, it's the way objects are treated. I mean, there's certain things that are just inherent into them, and their ability to do animation. I mean, how many people in the room feel that many set-top boxes can actually make a nice, smooth animation if something moves across the screen? Not. I mean, it's so. I mean, there are some. I'm starting to see some. I live in London. I'm working in the UK, but I've seen. I think the best quality that I'd seen on a current set-top box was one from Intel. It was for a project that we did in Europe. But most of them are not designed to do even the simplest of motions to a level I think that the audience would like.
Yeah, I think memory is also a really big problem as far as the set-top boxes go, because you can't download a lot of images, you can't put images on. Mm-hmm. That also limits the amount of animation you can do. Mm-hmm. When I start looking at HTML5 and web browsers on TV, I start to get excited about this sort of thing because I really think that that's going to be the next generation of things. And when you look at that, then it's like, okay, am I designing for TV, or am I designing for an iPad, or am I designing for a PC? I don't know. It all becomes kind of a big mush.
Olivia, I think you had said to me, you told me yesterday, and it says, the best is yet to come. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what you mean by that.
Mm-hmm. Sure. We all agree on the idea that the TV momentum has not happened yet. Regardless all our efforts as talented people and motivated people, but it's not happening yet. And but it's soon to be. I think that technology is there. I think that databases are there, connectivity is there, and somehow the engineering and the design is there. It's all about now to actually plug that into a chain that makes sense. For instance, here at NDS, we are not a separated design agency. We are working under one roof with the engineers. And it's amazing what can actually be achieved working with engineers hand to hand on a daily basis, not as a separated thing. So I think that the field of possibility exists. It's all about finding the right value chain, and at the end of the day, convince the CEO. That's where it happens. Because the project and the product we are currently focusing on are so tied to the strategy of the company that the CEO, to me, is today the limit factor for good or for bad.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would see as the driving thing.
And I mean, you've dealt with a lot of, kind of futurist type of stuff. I mean, we've seen Minority Report, we've seen all these, things out there. We see announcements at, E3. I mean, again, why is, TV's been around for a long time. It feels like, things are leapfrogging in terms of what's happening with tablet, what's happening with phone. And we're saying that, TV hardware is still fundamentally kind of the same as it was. And so, when if all is that going to change, and who's pushing? I mean, who's pushing to make the change happen? Who are you, who do you think is, most likely to, to push the ball forward?
Well, it's an interesting problem because when we originally came and talked last year at this conference, we actually looked throughout our database to find examples of people in sci-fi watching television, and it doesn't exist. So in many cases, sci-fi is leading the way on sort of what this technology could be, but it's not doing it for television. I think partially because it's not a great narrative hook. Let's go watch somebody watching television. Mm-hmm. The only place that people sort of get that thing is by inference. The Minority Report example is one that sort of inferred that was really a lot more active than most people are in front of their televisions or even sort of want to be unless they're a gamer. So I think it's actually sort of devoid, and all of the influences are going to come from outside of it, such as your experience with your computer, your iPad, at the cinema, or even on your game top box.
Well, so that's an interesting question, right? When we look at cross-platform, I think, everybody kind of believes from a user-centric experience perspective that, users want to watch what they want to watch, where they want to watch it, when they want to watch it. And the question comes to why is the TV? Why do you need a TV interface at all? Right? I was talking to somebody outside about this. Why have we not moved more aggressively towards having, touchscreen control that can, that can use TV as a dumb box as opposed to moving towards smart TVs, which we, keep assuming is going to be the natural outcome of where we're going. You can do a lot of this stuff on tablet and phone right now, but there's not still the connection that's happening between the TV itself and those devices. Why not?
Oh, well, I'll jump in on this one. I partially think it's a matter of technological momentum. I bought, I'm going to be hard-pressed to remember, the name of the computer that was built by MIT to be incredibly cheap, under $200. Anyone remember? What was it?
One?
Yeah, one laptop per
One,
child.
yeah.
I bought one of those for my eldest niece a couple of years ago, and came to her with Christmas and was like, hey, here you go. And she played with it for a couple of minutes, but then really wanted to spend a lot of time with my iPhone, and spent a ton of it. I think the expectations of young people are going to drive that answer much more so than the experience of people my age and older. People expect that level of interactivity, and it's like an entitlement, mm-hmm. but a technological entitlement that's not going away. It's getting worse.
Well, and I guess as you guys have looked around and worked in design across the TV space, how has things like the tablet and phone, from a design perspective, changed, what your expectations are, changed what your clients' expectations are, changed what your company's expectations are about what can and should be done, both within the 10-foot experience as well as, within these individual experiences, and how are you starting to approach or change direction as this cross-platform reality has kind of emerged?
I mean, I really love the iPad because it gets all those graphics off my screen and off my story. I mean, I think that's the most important thing, is that we just get those lower thirds out. Mm-hmm. I mean, TV started to imitate the web, which is really irritating because it's a storytelling device. Mm-hmm. So having the iPad and having that second screen thing is really great. It's really a matter of how you time those things and how you lay those events or issues out mm-hmm. on the TV. You don't want to compete with it. You want to support it, and you want to give the information when it's necessary.
I mean, from a design perspective, I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't know if you want to add to that, but also, kind of on top of that, what are examples we've seen of successful cross-platform instantiations right now? Have we seen any that people are really excited about? Are we still, again, in a best is yet to come moment, and it's really still a pretty fragmented experience? Like, I'm just curious, what have you seen out there that's interesting?
Somehow I ended up with a... Does this, I'm sorry, does this work? Can somebody
it does.
turn this on? Okay, good, thank you. Okay, sorry, I don't have to grab the phone. I'm excited about Anthony Rose's, who may actually be here. He's presenting tomorrow, the Z-Box. That's readily available to me. I'm in UK, so I use it. But what's interesting about Z-Box is that it was a very fast, you can flip through it, all the beautiful things you like about iOS, you take a list and fly through it and stop it at a dime, and the performance is terrific. You know, but I get that information, plus some other stuff like popularity. I can make a judgment about the popularity of shows. It has that data in there for what's on right now. But that whole system, that piece of information, is just floating as a layer in front of all that. I use Virgin system, cable system in the UK that delivers the stuff, but I'm finding myself not using that interface. I'm using this because it's better and quicker,
Yep.
and I haven't gotten it working yet, but I'm supposed to be able to actually change the channel with it. I can't get my TV to send a proper signal, but I mean, I should be able to use it as a remote. So that just becomes a really amazing remote, and also takes that stuff that's not performing very well on TV and putting it right here, and I can do that, which feels really good. So.
Actually, the stuff that Comcast is doing, you know, it's great because they're iterating very fast on
Yep.
it and taking user feedback. So
Some of that here.
The second screen is actually happening as we released this year. You can use on SFR, Zone, and soon to come Liberty, your iPad as a remote control, which will be as a touchpad, basic touchpad. In portrait mode. In landscape mode, then the UI actually will fly from the main screen to the second screen, and you can use it as a remote control. And then you can, while being on the go, you actually embed the overall experience, the TV experience, bundling the image and the menus on the same device. So the iPad mainly thing is happening right now. I think that where it will be even more interesting further down the road is that it will turn the problem from a software inside a box to an entertainment experience that you can log on, whatever the device, the most convenient, which is close by, and everything will be actually synced with the cloud. So remove the box, welcome the cloud, and use whatever device that makes sense to you to actually log on. And again, it shall be entertaining. It's not about the TV on the one side and the menu on the other, everything ending up in a terrible crash on the same screen. Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Though, do you think that this is going to be, the 10-foot is going to be a content screen strictly, and this is going to be everything else, the second screen? But that was for you, Olivia.
Sorry? Yeah.
No. My question was,
Yes, please.
Does that mean that the 10-foot will be pure content, or your vision that the 10-foot is pure content and the second screen is pure control?
Oh no, it depends the user preferences, so to say. So on the same screen, like the TV screen, you can have both the menu and the video. But if you feel like keeping the video here and having only the menus here, you can. Or if you want to actually have a different video here and a different video here, you can. It is actually, it's working today. I mean, there is 1 million people in France using that kind of mechanisms. And back on the second screen, it's great for kids.
You mean to distract?
Well, great or not great, depends the TV thing. Yeah.
Part of the reason why I'm sort of asking the question again, sort of from an outsider point of view, is one of the larger trends that I see doing my interaction design work at Cooper is the notion that interactivity was a stopgap. In that we're social animals, we live in the real world all the time, and this notion that there is a thing that pauses and waits for you is sort of a stopgap measure to what we sort of really want, is that to interact with flows around the world. Flows in our life. So it seems to me that why would this be a control mechanism when your body or your voice or your face could be that control mexinism? Like, I'm asking secondarily, is the second screen also a stopgap to something else?
But the second question, which is how is design going to be affected and how is interface going to be affected by new technology? So, I mean, there's a number of things that are out there right now, like gestural technology, like voice control technology, the cloud, 3 different examples of things that may have very different impacts on how you design an interface and how users use an interface. I mean, how bullish are you guys about gestural or voice as an example, as a way to change how interface is done, or is it going to be done in the same old way 10 years from now?
I really like. I mean, I liked voice when I saw it some years ago. I know that Comcast had a trial with a remote control with a microphone on the top, and you used it primarily for search. But on that one thing like search, it certainly saves a lot of time rather than use the on-screen remote. If you want friends, you just said friends. There it goes. It was really, so I think contextual use of voice. I don't believe in voice for everything, because it just seems like it's anything where you've got other people around. It's not private. It's why are you doing that? It's noisy. So, but I mean, for certain things, it's really good.
I do think I was going to add one thing that I've seen. We're doing a couple of voice projects at Cooper right now, and one of the things that we've combined actually is, well, the principle is that people are good at people, right? More so than technology, and more so ever than they will be at technology. And one of the ways that I'm talking to you, and Olivier knows that I'm not talking to him right now, is that I'm looking at you, and also pointing my apologies. But computers will get that smart.
Yes.
And television should be that smart as well.
Yeah.
If I am turning and talking to Olivier about the program, and I'm talking about my friends, that TV should know really cleanly that I'm not asking it to go look for friends. But if I'm looking at it or glancing that direction or gesturing that way, it should know, and it's almost certainly going to, as long as we get the infrastructure in place, because that's what people expect, because that's how they interact with other people.
Yeah, I think the fact that you have all these different input devices, it kind of simplifies all the interface work, so we can start delivering a little bit deeper information and deeper richness to the interface. I think it's really important that we embrace all these things. What people are going to actually adopt to, we don't know. I mean, obviously gestures working pretty well on the iPad and things like that. Mm-hmm. But I really think about when you start to think about design and you start to think about television design, I don't even think about it as television design anymore. Dale and I were talking earlier, it's just screen design. I mean, you can't not think about all screens when you design anything nowadays, because you don't know where it's going to end up. And it's a really interesting problem that we have. I mean, with the responsive design, with adaptive design, these different things that we have 36 different screens to get to. I mean, it's a little scary at times. And we also can't be quite as anal retentive as we usually are.
For me, it's the app model. I mean, we've actually had a conversation in TV interface that essentially everything is an app. And if you embrace that, I've thought this through, that what the iPhone did to navigation on a phone, which always had menus before, there's no menu on it. What you do is completely so if I wanted to go, I mean, we've had conversations like if the guide. I mean, some people like the grid guide, hold to it desperately. Other ones hate it. Well, let's give all kinds of things. I mean, let's make those apps you put on there, and I don't have to have it if I don't want it. So all of that should open up and be just like my iPhone is completely different than anyone else's here. They're all distinctly different. That's what the experience should be like. So it's completely tailored.
Well, can I challenge that? I saw your mic go up, Olivier. But we did some research fairly recently for a big tech company who has to remain nameless. But it was on television. One of the things that the research had sort of pointed out to us was that people regard that as relax time, not interaction time. And so the notion that the iPhone is all interaction. It's either a game or a call, or I'm taking notes, or buying a new app and trying this new thing, or taking a photo. Where the television is not that. So one of the things sort of I presumed from observing the results of that research was that no, the app model doesn't fit television, just because as a medium, it's mostly passive. I'm not in it, so I'm asking that as a question.
Yeah, I have to disagree with that, because I think if the app is designed properly, it's invisible to the user. I mean, it's just
But then why would anyone buy it?
Buy what?
An invisible app. I could make millions.
Because it's delivering you information in a way that's just, you don't have to work at it. It's relaxation, So, I mean, one of the things that, there's like audio sync to TV, it's too much work. You have to actually work at it to do it. That's not relaxing time. There's other apps that just absolutely just deliver it seamlessly. So it just countdown and just starts happening. You either pay attention to it or not. So it's really how the app is designed that makes it relaxing or not, and is supportive or not.
Yeah, and it comes down to this. I mean, a lot of, we're talking about, again, different screens are used by different people in different ways, right? So the question is, we've had these debates all the time with clients about when you turn on the TV, you expect it to go on and you expect to be watching something immediately, which is not generally the way that an interface works on the web, as an example, or on the phone, where you're presented with a home screen and then you have to go in to actually make something happen. I mean, are we moving more in the direction of, of that for our televisions, or is television, because of the nature of the 10-foot experience, as an example, always going to be something where you have this expectation that, you have beautiful plasma and it's going to come on, that is going to be different from what you expect from a tablet or from a phone or from the web?
On the voice and gesture, I'm a big believer in natural user interface because they are ambitioning to decrease the distance, whether it is space or time, by the way, in between the content and the user. And today, remote controls, 50 plus buttons is not a distance, it's a barrier, it's a wall. So we have to slowly but surely break that walls to decrease the distance in between the content and the user. And in that respect, everything which will be transparent will be on the right path. Mm-hmm. The apps, they will happen, I think. But again, it will be about not copying the web to the TV or the current iPhone apps to the TV. Indeed. If they are designed in a TV way, in regards of their content and in regards to their interaction model, people will love that. That's my view.
Jason, what you were saying about the TV is specific along other meetings, I agree with that. I mean, most of us let the TV runs. It just sort of runs until you change it. But we do want to change it. We want to respond to it. So I believe my favorite system that I've imagined in my head would be one that is that there's a flow of things. The show comes and there's a selection of things that maybe it knows. There's kind of a my channel thing there. But I can change it by waving. I can steer it in another direction, but it still just runs. I don't have to. I mean, the thing that doesn't feel like TV is the recommendations of things that I've seen, like the way that YouTube works, for example, where it goes and presents some stuff, but you're always having to go and select another thing and select another thing and do that. That work in there, I want a system that just sort of puts the stuff there and you can kind of steer it a little bit with your hand, but it still just runs on its own. Yep. That feels like TV. So
yeah, that's that level of magic and invisibility. I mean, when I first went up to Microsoft, and I was in TV before then, and everybody could explain to me exactly how a computer was working, and I pointed at the TV and I'd say, how does that work? None of them could tell me. So that's magic, and that's what interface has to become, invisible and just kind of flowing and easy.
So I mean, associated with that, I mean, again, some of the things we're dancing around here is, search and discovery and how that works as a design challenge, right? I mean, to us, at least when we're dealing with this at Method, it's always a challenge to say, we're living in a world of infinite content. We don't have a finite channel guide, and that's just the way that things have been done. How do you create that experience, right? Because you can't, with YouTube, they get, I don't know, I forget how many, millions of hours of video a day downloaded, even on top of the stuff that already exists. When you're dealing with being able to access any amount of content at any time, but still wanting to create a seamless experience that is about television, like, from a design perspective, how do you approach that challenge of discovery, and how do you change the paradigm, given that new world where you just don't have 500 or 300 channels? Like, what do you do from a design perspective to actually, get people to have a seamless experience in that environment?
I have two thoughts. The first is that we've already heard an example, which is I'm going to tell it what I want in a very literal sense. Well, let's watch Friends. Show me the latest Vim vendors. Let's go. A second thing, and actually I'll pull an example from a local company here called Prismatic. They're a startup firm. They've done something brilliant, which is that if you are a Twitter user, when you sign up for the service, you simply give it your Twitter handle, and then it makes news recommendations. The leap from one to the other is astonishing and dead on. Like, I've spent time on other sort of news sites trying to tweak preferences and tell it this and vote that. And the algorithms are getting smart enough that we don't need to do that. We're leaving enough traces as we move through the world, and smart engineers can start to pick up those traces and put together a model where that is the exception, not the, telling the television what I want is the exception, not the rule. It's where you're shifting the flow, correcting it, not initiating it. So I think it's kind of a Gordian knot problem.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Is that, imported interests is what you're talking about, but then there's implicit interests about what you've been searching for, and then there's declared interests. And I think the combination of all three is really when you're going to get TV personalized. But the biggest thing that worries me about that is you end up in this bubble. You end up in this bubble of what you like. I mean, some of the best TV experiences I've ever had have been when I've just been flipping through channels, and all of a sudden I saw a documentary on the history of plumbing. That was something
Yeah,
I wouldn't have chosen. It was wonderful.
There's a Sony project I did back in, I think it was 1999, that had a serendipity button. I mean, because you could, the concept there was you had 5,000 channels and how you could find anything. But I like surfing. I love being surprised. I love finding something. I love bad TV. I mean, like the really bad channels that are on the, back in the depths of your cable system, and finding some really bad infomercial or something. I mean, I really enjoy that. So
Well,
I'm
it's
able
funny.
to sort of find that.
Well, I was talking to somebody the other day, where they're talking about the fact that something like 50% of people, don't necessarily have a destination when they're going to watch TV. They turn it on and they see what's on, right? And they flip through, and that's why the guide still works in a lot of ways. But again, it becomes a much more complicated problem when you have an infinite amount of content. So,
Well, that's sort of an interesting question. Like, we create personas at Cooper. We invented them and we use them. And one of the things that I realize, again, being an outsider, is that I know my dad as a persona for television. He turns it on. He needs to sleep to the noise. He watches whatever's on. He's a channel flipper. But if we take Drew, yours is sort of another persona, which is somebody who wants to go find the oddball thing and raise it. I don't know if there's a flow for how you get rewarded for that and how that ends up being the serendipity for your friends or your network. But that's sort of an interesting, I love the oddball stuff too, but do I have time to go find it? No, but I'd be perfectly happy to sort of rest on the work that somebody else smarter and more vested in that than me would do.
The other notion too, though, is that, and we mentioned this earlier, but there is the thing where you get, certainly what a system can easily know is your habits and what you like in the past. But I think all of us, even day parting of me through the day, I like different things, and it doesn't know that. It doesn't know where I'm coming from. So something that's like a camera, using the camera systems, the motion detection systems like in Connect, if those motion sensors can detect body language. I mean, they can know without me having to grab the remote and go, I don't like this. I start squirming. It just changes the channel. I think a system can actually start doing that. But I'm saying that knowing that there are all of those fear factors in the audience about, oh, this camera's watching me or something. So, but I mean, there's some really wonderful things that can happen if you get some smart system that can just sort of detect your facial expressions and other things, and really just sort of, without even doing anything.
Does that solve for the design problem of profiles as well? I mean, this is another problem that I know we've had. I'm sure you guys have faced it as well. That the TV is inherently a shared device, whereas phones and tablets can be, one-to-one. So, just in the same way that TiVo and DVRs, in the early days, it's like thought that I had very odd, eclectic taste in video because I would watch SpongeBob SquarePants and also, things on HBO or whatever else. Again, we've gone back and forth on a lot of projects we've done about, how do you actually use a recommendation engine effectively when you have people from the ages of 2 to 90 watching your television at the same time that may have very, very different interests.
What is very interesting, I think, is that regarding the energy that we have all invested to change the TV experience, the algorithm, recommendation engine, second screen, and so on. Well, let's face it, we have not changed it. People are still looking at the same 9 channels, and the programming is still the same, and there has not been much change compared to the technology and the investment that has been done. Looks like we have a problem.
Either that or we come to understand the human condition. Both could be true, right?
Absolutely.
It is entirely possible, and here I'm going to reference the long tail, but it's entirely possible that television had a lot of money behind it, and so it learned quickly how to optimize towards the sort of the curvy part of the bell curve.
Absolutely.
And the challenge now is not to fix that, because that's not broken, right? My dad's perfectly happy watching whatever's on, but there's a long tail of people with unusual interests, and strange viewing habits and who are looking for that other content out there. And maybe that's the work at hand, not to change that bulk.
Absolutely. What I would say is that if we plan to succeed, whatever the technology, it has to be super simple. If not, we will not address what TV is about. That's to say, the mass market, millions, and it has to be insanely simple to make it adopted by all of us. And so far, nobody has achieved that, honestly.
Well, and I mean, I think going to
Looks like a good challenge.
this notion, I think, I think a lot of designers, and you guys, I loved your opinions on this, but a lot of designers look at things in a very user-centric way, right? So ultimately, it's about, what is the user experience going to be? What is the best for the user? Which also, may fly in the face of business realities of what a company wants. For instance, if I'm a designer, I could think, all right, well, integrating easy access to Netflix is a great thing if you're a Netflix subscriber, but if I'm the MSO, do I want to give you easy access to Netflix or not is a separate question, right? And it comes back to this whole question of ecosystem and how you deal with that. I mean, ultimately, people, the conventional wisdom would say that people want to get content however they can get it most easily, right? So, I don't really care so much if I'm watching Modern Family on live TV over Xfinity, or whether or not I'm watching it on Netflix, or whether or not I'm watching it on Hulu. I care about, what are my options, and, how can I get it? So, I mean, how do you deal with that problem, when we're dealing with a more complex, environment every day where there's more services, there's debates about whether or not we're going to go to, a specific program-centric, a network-centric, a, distributor-centric, ecosystem, what does that mean? I mean, again, it's very complex from a design perspective in terms of how you optimize that system for users with all of this stuff in play. How do you think about it?
I think it has to do with the smart system. I mean, right now, I cut the cable, 3 or 4 years ago. And what I do right now is I go to Apple TV, I go to Hulu Plus, I go to Netflix, I kind of get a lineup all set up, then I go ahead and watch. But that's a lot of work.
Yep.
I mean, that TV should recognize what I'm doing. It should start pushing that to me, and then it should give me other recommendations, and it should also give me the serendipity that we talked about. And algorithms can do that by just going a little bit to the left of your interests, or a little bit to the right, or just the opposite of your interests. So I really think that it's the push model is coming back, and that's what should be happening.
The push.
I think so, yeah.
Is there a nudge model? and I'm being very specific about that. Like, a pull model is I'm going there, give me this thing. A push would be I'm going to put this in front of your face. But the nudge model would be one where it's like, oh, hey, your buddy Drew has found this hilarious 1960s one-season thing he watched. He cracked up about it. You might be like somewhere tiny, not dead center. So.
And it's probably a little bit of all three, because, again, too, how do you make that system smart? Interests are and tastes in television change over time. You can't just do a declared set of interests, and that's going to be that for the rest of your life. It has to know that you're changing and evolving and doing those things.
Valence is always missing as well from those preferences. I used to listen to, confess my own political leanings, but I used to listen to right-wing radio in order to get angry and familiar with those sort of arguments. But like, if that was if anyone was watching me at that time, they would list sort of right-wing radio as one of my interests, and I would have to fight against that a great deal. But like anyone could be watching the thing they don't want to for any other reason. It could be, because I don't like this, or because it's not me, it's my kid on the same box.
Yep.
Right.
I fully agree. I definitely think it's a push thing. The programming of a TV station is push. Where we have to follow the track is to design something which is a push in a transparent and a super simple way. And in that respect, it will be TV. And whatever the screen.
So there's been a lot of mention, obviously, social is impacting everything that happens, and there's been a lot of mention of social within this, within some of these discussions right now. Again, how do you, how do you design for social, and has there been any good examples of that happening right now? We talked a little bit about it in the form of discovery. So obviously lots of people that are trying to do social on TV as a 10-foot screen experience, within individual, within other platforms and other screens. I mean, have you guys seen things that you've been very impressed by in terms of how social is being used right now? And if so, why? Why are you impressed?
I mean, unfortunately, this hasn't launched yet, but there's a system we designed in Europe, and they call it social TV, but it has some really good features. I can point out some things that we were all excited. We did it properly, this job. We worked over 2 years and did proper user testing. And we were surprised because we were all excited about, let's have a channel, a social channel that had, it would have Facebook names across there in your guide, and it had what they were watching now. And 100% of the users who used testing were horrified at that. I mean, I don't want anybody to see what they're watching. So, but what we realized is it's kind of a language thing. If you just turn that around and say, rather than what you're watching now, turn it into the like. So it's just the liking thing. I mean, whatever you call it, but something like the favorite liking thing. If I know that that my friends have liked that, I'm interested in seeing that, and that means that person. If I go to that person over here and here's that friend, and I see the things that it's what they declared that they liked. So, they're invested in that. So it's not anything private.
Well, it's funny. People don't seem to have this problem with music, as an example, right? I mean, you see things like Rdio and Spotify and others. People don't. I mean, it shows up all the time. In TV or video, we seem to have a different experience with that for some reason. I don't know why, but.
So we actually have been doing this at Yahoo with articles, and it's called Social Chrome, and I don't know if you've seen it, opt into it, but it shows all your friends and what they're reading, and you're right, half the people just flipped out. I mean, they just couldn't believe that it was happening. They couldn't figure out how to turn it off, so we had to make that very obvious. But we really saw that it was really pushing people to different articles and things like that. So if 5 of their friends had read an article, they were probably going to go read that article. Which is really interesting. Why would it be any different for a TV show?
And again, going back to the design experience, I mean, how do you see this being integrated into the design experience? Like, what does this mean? Is it something akin to the grid, or is it something? I mean, something that is separate from your video watching experience? Is a part of that video watching experience? I mean, when you're thinking about, again, whether or not it's done in a 10-foot experience or close up, like, again, how does this manifest itself from a design perspective?
I mean, in the EPG, it could totally just decorate it with the faces.
With that, but for me also, I mean, the beauty of what we used to call it marking at our company, just flagging things, which means yes, I like it. It's the same thing as like button. It's just you do something, but the actual graphics to do that is really nothing. So you're really not changing anything. You do provide. I mean, does it mean that in the guide I could actually see, ABC, CBS, friend 1, friend 2, friend 3, and we start including it in what we're seeing as a guide.
It's just a different discovery method.
It's another channel. So the person's a channel over there.
Can I answer your original question with something that just irritated the heck out of me? It was a social watching experience that was akin to MST3K, Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Yep.
And I forget, maybe it was Netflix, but the promise was that you could get your friends together to watch the same show. I'm in my living room, you're in your living room, you're wherever. But then we would be able to sort of riff on the show as it went. Well, that was delightful and promising, and my friends are a bunch of snarky assholes, so we jumped at this opportunity, only to find out that the powers that be had limited what you could say about the content. So you could say LOL or BRB or whatever. It was a very limited set of things that we would never say. And in fact, the whole reason we went there was to say things that were not what we were being allowed to say. And we never went back a second time. I think one of the sort of secrets about the implication and the big challenge it is to people who are providing these services is to let people challenge the content. Yes. Either call bullshit or make fun of it. Because that they're still vested in the content, even if it makes the content producers nervous.
Because that's going on anyway. That's my whole point. I mean, the whole thing that we got to have this controlled system back in there is like, it's a farce. I mean, what goes on actually with the real audience is quite different. So, in my opinion.
TV used to be social before we all turned into something very complex, no?
Yeah.
So the opportunity is huge. To get back to TV as a social media. There are many things which are tried at the moment, whether you can declare to like that program, whether it is in the grid or in whatever. But there are other interesting initiatives, like me turning into an editor and building up my own channel that people and my friends can follow. And by the way, I can post video comments that I can enjoy, turning themselves into on-air promotions. So there are many new ways to deal with that, but it has to be design-driven. Otherwise, we will end up in a very complex, geeky thing, which will fail again.
A face pile.
Yes.
Yeah, a moment ago, we were talking about the push and pull. I mean, what I like is push and respond. I mean, I like stuff coming at me, and I think respond is a very TV-like thing. So here's, whether it's like, here's a row of things, and just go like that. You know, I like that one, and you're on your way. So I didn't have to think about it, but it's give you some options, and you go. So that's what I like.
It raises a question in my mind. For those folks who have worked on television, what is your mental sort of model? Like if you think of first principles for television, what is that first principle? And partially I'm like, because in my mind it's a fireside. Like it's a fireplace in the center of a campsite where you sit around and watch the fire and talk to each other.
Oh, actually, that's a good question, because I was going to bring up earlier, I think it's very different things during the day. I mean, you could have a serious movie and everybody sits down and they're quiet like this. Other times it's wallpaper and it could be just keeping you friendly and happy, you know, if you're lonely, but things like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's very different in different moments. So.
To me, it's an HD video full screen that rolls without the user to have to interact to make it happen. And everything around that should be transparent. Because ultimately the UI is not the UI for the sake of the UI. The UI is there to lower and to decrease the distance between what you would like to see and the thing which is on the screen. Yes. So ultimately, there is a video, and that's it.
It goes
and
back
the rest should
fly. It goes back to this whole thing we talked about, which is, you know, exactly, we're creating nothing and selling it for a lot of money. That's the way to do it, right? So, I mean, I think, this is the conundrum, right? The conundrum is, you know, the killer app for television is television, right? Because it's become a very complex system, because there's a lot of complexity in the system now in terms of, you know, where you get your content, how much content there is, how you actually discover and search for that content. You know, how do you use design to get out of the way so you can actually, at the end of the day, do what you want to do, which is watch something that you want to watch, right? So, I mean, I think that's where ultimately it comes out to. In an ironic way, it is, you know, really, how do you make it as invisible as possible, so you can actually achieve the end goal of it not seeming to be there, not seeming to be an impediment, but being, you know, something that you don't even notice.
You know, the great thing about television design is that it just carries you from story to story. If you just watch one station with bumpers and interstitials and the way it carries you into a commercial and out. I mean, my main emphasis now in design is how do I do that on experiences on tablet, on PC. Moving in and out of apps is like a pain in the ass.
Yeah, because I've been in the broadcast world for a long time, and that's what it is. It's all that graphical glue. It's branding, it's promotion, and advertising in many cases, that stuff, but that flow of things, and what sits between the pieces, and that's what sort of doesn't work with the current YouTube thing. Is it's like, here's a thing, it ends and it stops, and
go find another one.
It stops again. that isn't what TV does. TV keeps flowing. So.
But it's interesting because, I mean, again, I don't know if it's a result of the fact that it's part of Google or whether or not that's why Google bought it, but ultimately, to me, YouTube is a search-driven interface in a sense, right? I mean, YouTube has everything. So I know when I want to go, hey, I want to go find those old commercials I watched in the 70s for my daughter who's never seen them before, I can go in and look for that and they'll come up. And then I might look for something else, right? But it is, I mean, I use it in that way, not in the same way I use TV.
That is a different experience, though. I mean,
absolutely.
The question was about what is television,
absolutely,
which is a different thing than that. So they're both valid. So
but I also think that you can build a search system so that it moves you in and out of the experience. You don't have a break. it doesn't like jarring break. I mean, it's how do we exit an experience? How do we enter an experience? And if we can seam that up nicely, I mean, right now, I mean, I loved your presentation, Dale, because you're all talking about environment. It's not page metaphors, it's not anything, everything's kind of seamlessly moving. And I think that that's the way all of design across all screens is going to be happening, so.
So before, I mean, we only have about 5 more minutes, so like, why don't we, I mean, does anybody else, anything particularly, you know, questions or things that people want to talk about before we, you know, kind of keep going? I don't know if there's anything particular you want to cover from the audience.
It is my opinion that mandatory for good user experience, you have to have pretty strong underlying data. Because if you try to dress any metadata as you buy it from Rovi or Tribune, eventually you get the same UI. This is the reason when you go to IBC or CS and you visit, you almost feel that it comes from God, that it has to look the same. And the only difference is the colors and the font size. But apart from that, and the reason that all guides look the same, because they all live on top of the same metadata. So at least we feel that if you cannot change a different underlying smart data, because the smart data can dumb down the user experience.
But that's also social metadata too. I mean, that's what works very well for me with YouTube, for example, is that sort of messy, user-driven metadata that's behind there is actually quite interesting, but it's messy.
What I will say is, you know, just as a tactical experience, yeah, I do think that, you know, our design team gets driven crazy by the fact that, you know, they're limited in terms of the assets they can use to, you know, deliver on the experience. Again, not so much, I mean, it goes back to the interface and how invisible or not it is, because at the end of the day, the video is the video, and the video is you know, is delivered in the format. It's just a question of how you know, what assets you have to be able to, you know, play with to be able to make the interface, you know, work in an interesting way. Any other particular things people want to cover? I mean, I think it's...
Advertising. So how do we create something that makes the advertiser happy? Someone stop, look at it, participate with it, and then move on to the flow. Keep that flow. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Check. So how do you basically take advertisement in this flow and make it work for the advertiser to say, cool, I got 40,000 impressions on that, but it was still flowing. That's the hardest thing, because we all got to pay for this.
I think it's relevance, and I also think it's great creative. I mean, if you have a TiVo, I mean, I look at commercials all the time, and I go back when I see something really creatively great. So good creative and relevance, I think, will always make advertising valuable to the user.
I also think it's... Oh.
Excuse me, the audience.
Yes, it's the big question. Because with all the software power that we have now, we are turning streams, TV stuff, into databases. Because we chop the streams and we provide access to the users to really spot on areas instead of letting them watch the same channel for 5 hours, hoping that they will not zap to another. So we are currently deconstructing the streams and project them into databases, into a space, which is the OS itself. So we have now the huge responsibility to actually reallocate ads from the streaming to the space.
Well, and also I think design can play a role. I mean, again, some of the stuff you guys have done, you know, Turner has done in terms of creating second screen experiences that play in and provide not only better value to the consumer, but also potentially to sponsors, right? So I think there are also things we can do when we're starting to look at a multi-screen environment that we haven't historically been able to do, although, to your point, as we move more towards an anywhere, you know, anytime model, you know, where does advertising fit in? Where does a typical 30-second spot fit in? I think at the same time, we're seeing new experiences that, you know, that are derived from the interactivity. We also, in theory, have a lot more data to play with in terms of how to feed relevant ads to people too, which is partially a technology question, partially a design question, I think we're about out of time. We may have time for one more question if anybody has any. Otherwise, maybe we, you know, I mean, anyways, anybody else? So I just want to, like, maybe last words, anything in particular you think is ultimately important for all of you guys that you know want to put in terms of, like, you know, what is the one thing what has you changed, or what is you think the single most important kind of trend that's impacting what's happening in design and UI right now?
No.
I think my job right now is to confuse people as to what screen they're watching. I mean, I think every screen is designated to be a certain sort of thing, information or entertainment. What's that? Okay. I'm sorry I gesture. It's the Italian in me. Yeah, right. So at any rate, is just really confusing people as to what screen you're watching. I mean, I think all screens do all things now, and it's just kind of an interesting design challenge to just try to figure out how to lose the audience in the experience. So you might be searching through information, then all of a sudden immersed into a video, and then how do I pull that off? So that's the challenge.
All right.
Yeah, well, I think that the one thing that that everybody, including the clients and the operators, should do is consider design as a driving force of the project. We've seen how engineering-driven projects have turned into. So let's move on to something else. But then, as designers, we have the responsibility to make something great, to make something that mass market is adopting, and something which is in line with what TV is about. So if by chance we end up having that responsibility, it's not the time to blow it up. Voilà.
Great. Well, thank you.
Thanks very much, gentlemen. Well, we're about to go into a break, and I just want to remind you, by the way, that you can access your TV Plus application, tvplus.com. Don't forget to